Welcome to the Avoidance of Foreclosure and Eviction section of the Dodd-Frank Prep course brought to you by NHNLA. This is Unit 6B. Section 6.5, CFPB, the loss mitigation process. So what is the CFPB? It's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It was created after the financial crisis by the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act of 2010. So basically, after the mortgage market plummeted, Dodd-Frank came about. They created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They make the markets for consumer financial products and services work better. For more information, you can go to www.consumerfinance.gov. And I highly recommend you do. You can actually sign up for their listserv, and that way anytime they're putting out new forms, new documents, new everything, they'll solicit feedback from industry professionals. And so you can have a voice in how new ideas and new processes and procedures are formulated. All right, moving right along. They write rules, they provide supervision and enforcement, they write reports, they provide public education. They wrote the rules for mortgage servicers, the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, also known as Reg X, and Truth in Lending Act, also known as Reg Z. And these new rules became effective January 10th, 2014. So I got a question for you. Which regulations covers the loss mitigation rules? Reg X, RESPA, or Reg Z? Take a moment to think about it. The answer is Regulation X. Rule addresses error resolution and information requests. It addresses force-placed insurance, general servicing policies, procedures, and requirements. It addresses early intervention with delinquent consumers. It addresses the continuity of contact with delinquent consumers. And it addresses what? Drum roll, please. Loss mitigation. Now, Reg Z addresses the following: interest rate adjustment notices for ARMs. It addresses the prompt crediting of mortgage payments and responses to requests for payoff amounts. And it addresses periodic statements for mortgage loans. So the rules apply to almost all servicers, with the exception of small servicers, which are 5,000 loans or less. They're exempt from some of the rules, not all of them. CFPB sets the minimum standards for the industry to follow, and they enforce them as well. They've put out a list of 10 steps of the loss mitigation process, and we're getting ready to go through them right now. Now, if you are following along in the book, you will be on, let's see, it starts right on page 1. Live contact from the servicer to the borrower. So from the time the first payment is missed, within 36 days, the servicer must make a good faith effort to reach the borrower by telephone and not just leave a message, or to talk to the borrower in an in-person meeting to discuss the circumstances of the borrower's delinquency. So that's immediately, or within 36 days, so fairly quickly. And of course, there's an exception to the step 1. This rule does not require contact with the borrower who has filed bankruptcy for relief, or if they've already instructed the servicer in writing to cease communications with them pursuant to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, also known as FDCPA. If they're making payments as agreed on any loss mitigation contract. And then if they send a timely payment to a former servicer within 60 days before the current servicer took over the loan. So let's talk a little bit about the last two. If they're making payments as agreed, why would they want to call them anyway? Because they may be on a loss mid program like a forbearance, where technically they're still past due, so they go over 36 days. But if they're making the payments as agreed, then they don't have to call them. And then if someone's loan is being transferred to another servicer, it's very possible that the payment just got delayed in getting posted or what have you. So this is another exception. Step 2. We're on page 2. General information about loan workout and modification possibilities. So promptly after the servicer makes live contact with the borrower, the servicer must tell the borrower about what's available, or that loan mitigation options are available if appropriate. The information given to the borrower at this stage does not have to be specific. So they don't have to say, oh, you qualify for this, that, and the other. Rather, they just have to tell them that there may be some loss mitigation options available to them. The exception is the same as we just talked about. Bankruptcy relief, the FDCPA has been invoked by the borrower if they're making payments already on a loss mit contract, or if the loan has just been transferred. Step 3, assigning personnel and written notice. Specific point of contact. This was huge because what we were seeing is the borrowers were calling into call centers, counselors were calling into call centers. We never got the same person, and everybody had a different story. So now servicers are required to assign a certain person and on each file, and you have to give them their contact information. So the personnel should be assigned, should be able to respond to the borrower's inquiries and assist the borrower with available loss mitigation options, such as giving accurate information about loss mitigation options, telling the borrower what he or she has to do to apply, telling the borrower what the deadlines are, which is very important, not only for applying, but also for processing the application. And then they have to tell the borrower how to appeal if the servicer denies the loss mit application. And this is all new based on CFPB, which is wonderful. Telling the borrower the status of any loan mitigation application. Being able to provide complete record of the payment history. Being able to provide all written information to the borrower that the borrower, has submitted to his servicer in connection with the loss mitigation application. And then finally, giving the borrower information about the procedures for error resolution and requesting information from the servicer. So they have to do all of that. And this, again, if you're following along, is at the bottom of page 3 and onto page 4. And you may just want to keep that, look at that periodically so you know this is now what's required. They have to do this. They have to. Unless they have 5,000 loans or less, but that's not most of our clients. So after the first missed payment, this assigning of personnel and written notice has to be done within 45 days. And the notice must include, encourage the borrower to contact the servicer. So that they're doing. And this is at the bottom, this section is at the bottom of page 4. Give the telephone number for the personnel assigned to the borrower and the servicer's mailing address. Wish they did emails. Give examples of the loss mitigation options that might be available. Give the borrower a loss mit application. And give the borrower website address and the HUD toll-free telephone number where the borrower can access the CFPB or the HUD list of housing counselors and organizations. And I have seen servicers doing this already, so that's good. The exception to this one, the servicer does not have to send the written notice. Again, the borrower filed bankruptcy, or if they've invoked the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. If the borrower is already making payments, they don't have to send this written notice. If the servicer has sent a written notice under this section of the statute to a borrower in the last 180 days, they don't have to send a new one. So every 6 months, within a 6-month period, I should say, if they've gone more than 36 days late, they don't have to send a new notice. Step 4, periodic statements with delinquency information. So once the borrower has been delinquent for more than 45 days, the servicer must send the borrower the following letter. And the following letter is the periodic statements with delinquency information. And this is wonderful because what we used to see is if a borrower is more than usually 90 days, they would stop getting their statements. And so they had no idea how far past due they actually were. And now this says they have to send this. The date the borrower became delinquent has to be on it. Possible risks such as foreclosure and expenses that might be incurred by the borrower if the delinquency is not cured. An account history covering the period since the account was last current or the last 6 months. Whether the servicer has made the first foreclosure notice of filing. How much must be paid by the borrower to bring the account current. It must also include a web address and the HUD toll-free number where the borrower can access the CFPB or the HUD list of housing counselors and organizations. And then, excuse me, information about any loss mitigation programs that the borrower has already agreed to. So this has to be sent to the borrower periodically. Oops. And of course, you guessed it, more exceptions, although the exceptions are a little bit less. Only 2 for this one, a bankruptcy filing and an FDCPA cease communication letter. Then they don't have to send it. Step 5, the borrower applies for loss mit application. So what makes an application an application? Simply asking about loss mit options, not an application. But if the borrower provides any information that can be used as part of a loss mit application, it is considered an application. When servicer acknowledges receipt of the application, the 45-day rule applies. If the application is received before 45 days of the sale of the date, 45 days of the sale date, the lender must review the application to determine completeness and send the borrower an incomplete letter and provide at least 7 days to provide missing items. So that's the 45-day rules. The application has to be received before 45 days of the sale date. 45 days prior to the sale date. And then they have to review it and determine completeness. They have to say either yay, it's complete, and then they have time to review it, or if it's incomplete, they have to give the borrower 7 days to provide those missing items. So what if there's less than 45 days remaining? Well, if the application is incomplete when received during this time, the servicer continues to have an obligation to exercise reasonable diligence in obtaining documents and information to complete a loss mit application. The borrower completes the application. When is the application complete, you might ask? Well, an application is complete when the borrower gives the servicer all the information it requires from the borrower. So, if the servicer is waiting for information from a third party, such as a credit report agency, the application is still complete because the borrower has submitted everything that was requested of them. All right, so step 8, and let's see, where is this in your book? Make sure I keep you on point here because I know we're going through it. Step 8 is on page, is it page 11? No, it's on page 9. On page 9. So applications received before 37 days prior to sale must be evaluated for all loss mitigation options available to the borrower. So 45 days is ideal, but definitely 37 days. Must be evaluated for all loss mitigation options available to the borrower. And this evaluation must be conducted by the servicer within 30 days of receiving the complete loss mit application. Now, after 37 days, meaning if they get the application within 37 days of the sale date, the servicer does not have to follow the loss mit requirements. The servicer must have procedures in place to reasonably abide by what the investor requirements are. The servicer evaluates the borrower's complete loss mit application. Now, transfer of servicing while complete loss mit application is being evaluated, and I'm so glad they decided to address this. The transferee servicer must get all the documents and information the borrower gave to the old servicer. So let's use, for example, mortgage company A was working with the borrower on a loss mit application. The borrower submitted all the documents and received notice that the application was complete. Well, prior to approval, the loan was transferred. Well, the new servicer has to get the documents from the old servicer and treat it as if the information had been submitted directly to them by the date that it was submitted. So what we saw in the past was if a file got transferred, you had to start from scratch. And if you were within a certain number of days of sale, you were just out of luck, right? So now with the new CFPB rules, which I love, they go by the original date. So if you transfer a file or if mortgage company A transfers to B, B still has to honor the fact that borrower got all those documents in a timely fashion. So the transfer servicer should continue the evaluation to the extent practical. The servicer offers a denial or denies a loss, the servicer offers or denies a loss mitigation option. That's step 9. And so what they're saying is either an offer is made for a loss mit option or they get a denial letter. A written notice must include which loss mit option the servicer is making, and it must notify the borrower of the amount of time the borrower has to accept or reject the offer. If the applicant is denied for any available loan mod program, the notice must give specific reasons for denial. If the borrower's application is denied for any loan mod program, trial, permanent, whatever, it's not sufficient for the servicer to say that the denial of the loan mod is based on investor requirement. They have to say the denial is based on the MPV calculations, or the denial is based on insufficient income, or whatever. They must be specific. If a trial or permanent loan mod is denied because of the net present value calculation, the servicer has to provide the borrower with the inputs used in the net present value calculation. Now, they don't have to provide the analysis itself, but you can go to www.mympv.net and pull that up on your own. And you can just input the inputs. Input the data that was provided by the servicer to see where the error, if there's an error, or if they're denied for valid reasons, you can see that too. The servicer has to notify the borrower of any rights to appeal the decision, requirements for appealing, and the time the borrower has for appealing. So the servicer basically has to say, well, you have the right to appeal, this is what we require in the appeals process, and this is how much time you have to do it in. Now, step 10, borrower's acceptance or rejection of an offer. Once an offer is made, the borrower has to accept or reject the servicer's loss mit offer. Minimum time can vary based on the foreclosure sale date. But you don't want your clients just kind of waiting around. You want to make a decision fairly quickly once that offer has been made. If the completed loss mit application was received by the servicer 90 days or more before the foreclosure sale, the servicer has to give the borrower at least 14 days to make that decision. If the servicer received the application less than 90 days but more than the 37 we've been talking about, the servicer has to give the borrower at least 7 days. Now, consequences of not responding to a loss mit offer is basically the same as rejecting. If the borrower does not respond by the deadline, the servicer can treat it as a rejection of the offer. Now, the borrower's rights. Appeal rights if loss mit is denied. Let's say if the servicer has denied the borrower a loan mod, the borrower may still appeal the servicer's denial. The borrower who submitted the package 90 days or more before the foreclosure sale can appeal. And it must occur within 14 days of receiving the written denial notice. Let me say that one more time. If the borrower submitted the package 90 days prior to the foreclosure sale, then they're eligible to appeal, and they'll have 14 days to do it. Does that make sense? All right. Servicers, again, must notify the borrower of decision within 30 days of appeal being submitted. So if they get it in within that 2 weeks, the servicer has 30 days to review the appeal offer. If the offer is made, the servicer has to tell the borrower how long they have to, again, accept or reject. So if they agree with the appeal and they decide to make an offer, the borrower's got 2 weeks. The servicer's decision on appeal is not appealable any further. So if the servicer denies the appeal, then that's it. So now we've got some foreclosure prohibitions. And let me tell you what page that starts on, because this goes on for just a minute. Page 16. CFP foreclosure prohibitions. A servicer cannot make the first notice of filing required by applicable law until the borrower is more than 120 days delinquent. So the first notice of filing required by law until the bar is more than 120 days delinquent. In judicial states, this is the first document filed in the court or with another judicial body. In non-judicial states, this would be the earliest document required to be recorded or published to initiate the foreclosure process. So this is a change because, right, in some states it was 90 days, but CFPB says 120. A servicer who is not a small servicer, meaning 5,000 or less, cannot file for any judicial or non-judicial foreclosure if the borrower submits a complete loss-mint application before foreclosure is filed. So if they filed a complete application, the servicer can't go behind their backs and then still file for foreclosure. CFPB says, no, This prohibition on filing foreclosure lasts until one of the following has happened. 1. The servicer has denied the borrower's application for loss-mint, and the appeal process is not available to the borrower whose loss-mint application was denied, or the time for the appeal of the denial has expired, or the borrower has appealed a loss-mint denial and the appeal was denied. So the servicer has denied the borrower's application for loss-mint, and appeal is not an option, basically, right? Yes. 2. The borrower has rejected all loss-mint options offered by the servicer. Then the servicer can move forward. 3. The borrower does not perform as required under a loss-mint agreement. A borrower is performing during the listing or marketing period of a short sale or other similar agreement. Now, what does that mean? That means if the borrower is in a short sale, but then they're also making the payments, then that is performing. And so then the borrower is considered to not be performing as required under a loss-mint agreement. A borrower may be deemed to have failed to perform if there is no approved short sale transaction at the end of the listing or marketing period. Also, no foreclosure during forbearance period, 6 months or shorter. So if you're in a foreclosure, if you're in a forbearance, a formal or otherwise, there can be no foreclosure. So what happens if the borrower submits a complete loss-mint application after foreclosure has been filed? Well, if it's more than 37 days before the sale, a foreclosure has been filed, more than 37 days, and the borrower submits a complete loss-mint application, a servicer cannot move for a foreclosure judgment. Now, if it's less than 37 days, the servicer does not have to follow the loss-mint requirements, and the servicer then just maintains their policies and procedures that are reasonably designed to abide by their investors' or their owners' requirements. That is the end of Unit 6B and Section 6.5. Thank you.